Welcome to the first episode in our new series, Demystifying the Millennial Kingdom. So, why study the Millennial Kingdom? Well, Dr. Michael Vlock, in his book titled Premillennialism, Why There Must Be a Future Earthly Kingdom of Jesus, says the following. The millennium is not some incidental doctrine that doesn't really matter. It's a major part of the Bible storyline and involves the nature and timing of Jesus' kingdom. The idea of a future earthly kingdom of the Messiah is not something dropped from the sky in Revelation chapter 20. It has deep roots going back to Genesis chapter 1. And Dr. Arnold Fruchtenbaum makes this astute point. Every writing prophet, with the exception of just 4, Jonah, Nahum, Habakkuk, and Malachi, had something to say about the millennial kingdom. Now, if the prophets are writing that much about this future kingdom, you would think it'd be a major topic of Bible study. In addition to the topic of the kingdom being a major part of the Bible storyline, it seems the disciples were also interested in it. In Acts chapter 1, verses 6 and 7, the disciples are standing there with a resurrected Jesus, and their question is this: Lord, are you restoring the kingdom to Israel at this time? You see, the disciples were familiar with what the Hebrew prophets wrote about concerning the future of Israel. Therefore, when Jesus rose from the grave, they had a certain expectation that the Messiah was going to bring his kingdom. Now, notice how Jesus responds. He doesn't rebuke the disciples. He doesn't tell them that things have now changed and there's a new plan. And it's different from what the Hebrew prophets wrote about. He does not tell them that they've misunderstood, and now he's just going to bring a spiritual kingdom. He doesn't say any of that. Instead, he simply says, it's not for you to know the times or periods that the Father has set by his own authority. Jesus is simply saying to the disciples, it's not for you to know the time. The kingdom is going to arrive, but the timing is up in the air. Now that we've covered some good reasons for studying the millennial kingdom, let's move on to the 2 most popular views of the millennial kingdom. The 2 most popular views are best described as the premillennial view and the amillennial view. Let's start with the premillennial view. The prefix pre refers to the timing of when the Lord establishes his kingdom. The premillennial view proposes that the Lord will first return and then he establishes his kingdom. So he arrives before or pre the kingdom. In addition, the premillennial view proposes that there's a future 1,000-year reign of the Messiah on earth after the second coming of the Messiah, but before the beginning of eternity future. Again, we'll cover that in detail throughout these episodes. But here are the important things to remember about the premillennial view for now. Number 1, it's in the future. It's not happening right now. Number 2, it's a literal kingdom. It's not spiritual in nature. Number 3, it's on earth. Now let's contrast this to the amillennial view. The prefix a means none or without. In other words, there's no future millennial kingdom to look forward to. This view proposes that passages like Revelation chapter 20, which describes a time period in which Satan is bound, that period is being fulfilled spiritually now. The Messiah Jesus is reigning through the church or in the hearts of believers right now. It's a spiritual reign, and there's no literal 1,000 years to look forward to on earth. Now, let's go to the scriptures as we seek to provide evidence that indeed, this millennial kingdom is not Narnia. It's not Oz. It really does exist, and it's coming to earth. Our first passage that provides evidence of a future literal kingdom on earth is found in Revelation chapter 5. What we see here in Revelation 5 is that believers must reign upon the earth in the future. In the context of Revelation 5, John is seeing this vision. Nobody is worthy to open the scroll and its 7 seals until finally, One is found who is worthy. The Lamb of God, Jesus, is the only one. Beginning in verse 8 of Revelation chapter 5, we read the following. When he, that's the Messiah, took the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each one had a harp and gold bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song. You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slaughtered and you redeemed people for God by your blood from every tribe and language and people and nation. Now, verse 10 is our key verse that reveals something about the future kingdom. And it says this, You made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign on the earth. So we learn 2 things here. Number 1, it's a future reign that will take place for these believers. Number 2, it takes place on earth. Not in some kind of spiritual realm or in somebody's heart. Our next passage comes from the book of Corinthians. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 6 through 9, Paul is correcting the Corinthians because it appears they were confused. Beginning in chapter 4, verse 6, we read the following. Now, brothers, I've applied these things to myself and Apollos for your benefit, so that you may learn from us the saying, nothing beyond what is written. The purpose is that none of you will be inflated with pride in favor of one person over another, for who makes you so superior? What do you have that you didn't receive? If in fact you did receive it. Why do you boast as if you hadn't received it? Now, verse 8 is where Paul seems to mock the current Corinthian attitude when he says the following. You are already full. You're already rich. You've begun to reign as kings without us. And I wish you did reign, so that we could also reign with you. For I think God has displayed us, the apostles, in last place, like men condemned to die. We've become a spectacle to the world and to angels and to men. We are fools for Christ, but you are wise in Christ. We are weak, but you are strong. You're distinguished, but we're dishonored. Up to the present hour, we're both hungry and thirsty. We're poorly clothed, roughly treated, homeless. We labor working with our hands. When we're reviled, we bless. When we're persecuted, we endure it. When we're slandered, we respond graciously. Even now, we're like the world's garbage, like the dirt everyone scrapes off their sandals. What we see here in Paul's letter to the Corinthians is that Paul is seeking to correct their attitude. You see, the Corinthians thought they'd already arrived. They thought they were already reigning. Dr. Michael Vlock writes the following about this passage. Paul sarcastically mocks their attitude. He plays along and says they've become filled and rich. You've become kings without us, he declared. Paul then switches back to telling them the reality. I wish that you had become kings, so that we also might reign with you. You see, contrary to the way that the Corinthians were acting, Paul says they were not reigning. It'd be nice if they were reigning, because Paul would like to be reigning along with them. But that was not reality yet. Another passage that provides evidence for a future kingdom on earth is the very words of the Messiah in Matthew chapter 19, verse 28. Let's begin in verse 27, where Peter says the following. Look, we've left everything and followed you, so what will there be for us? Jesus said to them, I assure you, in the Messianic age, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Here, Jesus is teaching about this future Messianic age. Another name for that is the Messianic kingdom. A few things we learn here. Number 1, Jesus says that the Son of Man will sit on his glorious throne. There's no indication here that this throne is just spiritual in nature. In fact, everything in this verse points to this being a literal reign. And then Jesus tells the disciples, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones. So here, Jesus is promising that these Jewish disciples will reign. They will have some kind of positional authority when he is reigning as king. And who's their authority over? It's over the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 disciples will rule the 12 tribes of Israel. So what we also learn is that there's clearly going to be an Israel in the millennial kingdom. And we'll talk about that more as we progress through our series and demystify the millennial kingdom. But for now, let's take a look at one more passage. Jeremiah chapter 31. Here we learn that there's some new covenant promises that remain unfulfilled as of today. One of those unfulfilled promises is the spiritual restoration of Israel. Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 31 to 34 say this: "Look, the days are coming," this is the Lord's declaration, "when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. This one will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors, when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. A covenant they broke, though I had married them," the Lord's declaration. Now, let's pause right there for just a second. I want to note how Jeremiah, under the inspiration of the Spirit, is making a distinction between the new covenant, which in his day was yet future, and the Mosaic covenant, which another name for that is the law of Moses. And what Jeremiah says is this new covenant will not be like the Mosaic covenant. These are important distinctions. And if you're interested in learning more about these distinctions and what differences it makes, I'd encourage you to listen to the most downloaded episode of the Tov podcast called Distinctions Between the Covenants. But for now, our purpose is this. In verse 33, it says, "Instead, this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after those days," the Lord's declaration. "I will put my teaching within them and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will one teach his neighbor or his brother, saying, 'Know the Lord,' for they will all know me, from the least to the greatest of them. This is the Lord's declaration. For I will forgive their wrongdoing and never again remember their sin." You see, one of the promises attached to the new covenant is the full spiritual restoration of the whole nation of Israel. This is why Paul could write, "One day all Israel will be saved," in Romans 11:26. Not only was Paul writing under the inspiration of the Spirit, but he had read the promise throughout the prophets, including in Jeremiah. It is in the millennial kingdom when finally Israel will be restored spiritually to her Lord and physically to her land. What a glorious day that's going to be when Israel awakens. Well, in this part of our series on demystifying the millennial kingdom, we provided the evidence for a future millennial kingdom on earth. As we've been able to see, there are promises to both Gentile believers and additional promises to the nation of Israel that have yet to be fulfilled. But God is faithful, and He will bring all these promises to fruition. Thanks so much for joining us today. Smash that like and subscribe button on your way out. Until next time, Shalom.